Winter season is here, and after a long day we all want to warm up with a little cup of spiced wine. In this video, I'll share my secret recipe for mulled wine that is guaranteed to please all your friends and family, and at the end I'll reveal the special ingredient that makes this mulled wine so delicious. My name is Garry and I'm a WSET3 qualified sommelier, so let's not waste time anymore. Making mulled wine might seem very simple. You just take a bottle of wine, heat it up and add spices. What could be easier, but be patient, it's not as simple as it seems. Let's start by choosing the right wine for mulled wine. And here's the dilemma. Should we buy an expensive wine or just a cheap wine? As a sommelier who works with wines and values the quality of this noble drink, I can tell you one thing. The quality of the wine doesn't affect the taste of mulled wine, at all. When we taste wine, we try to distinguish various primary, secondary and tertiary aromas of fruit, berries and wood, but when making mulled wine, none of these aromas or flavors matters. We just need a good base for mulled wine, as all the flavors will come from the added spices and fruit. So there is no point in buying a 50 € bottle of wine to make mulled wine. Even a sommelier wouldn't guess you used an expensive wine for this winter drink or not. So don't waste your money, grab the second cheapest bottle at the nearest supermarket, and yeah, it's perfectly fine to pick up a super cheap wine. I won't tell anyone. I absolutely love watching the faces of store consultants when I say I want the cheapest bottle of wine in the supermarket. They usually say check the bottom shelf, because normally the cheapest wines are sold there, and walk away with a disappointed look. The wine could basically be anything. If you're in Italy, it could be Veneto Rosso. If you're in Spain, it may be Vino de Mesa or Vino de España, wine of Spain. In France, it may be just any regional cheap wine as well. My only recommendation is to get a wine with a slightly higher alcohol content. When we make mulled wine, the fruit will absorb some wine, and due to evaporation, a lot of alcohol will be lost. So if you use a wine with 10% alcohol, you risk ending up with a 5% drink, which feels more like beer, not like wine. A wine with around 13–14% alcohol is a perfect option for making mulled wine. Alright, so we've got a suitable bottle of wine. What else do we need to do? We'll also need some fruit. Yeah, actually I'm lying, we need a lot of fruit. Let's start with 1 or 2 oranges for each bottle of wine. Citrus is essential for mulled wine because it adds rich citrus aromas along with a bit of acidity. Cut the orange into 4 or 5 pieces and add it into the pot. If you want, you can add more orange, no problem. 1 or 2 oranges per bottle of wine is just fine. Orange is the base of any mulled wine, you can't skip it. Other citrus fruit can be added to your taste. It's good to have a tangerine or a lemon. Tangerine is fantastic for mulled wine, but be careful with the lemon. It has a lot of acidity, and if you add too much, the mulled wine could end up tasting like lemon soda. We don't want it, so add lemon sparingly. You put in a couple of slices, maybe 3, but no more. You may also want to have an apple here. Cut it into pieces and add it into the pot. If you want to have more fruit, go ahead. I prefer to stick with the basic variety of sweet apple for sweetness, surprisingly green apple for some acidity to balance the sweetness, and some orange with peel. These are the basic primary aromas that sometimes are present in wine, and by adding the fruit we are intensifying these aromas, making them more pronounced. Okay, let's move on to the spices. The 3 main spices for the perfect mulled wine are cinnamon, star anise and cloves. Out of these, I think star anise is the most important spice. Why is star anise so important? Because without this star in your glass, Christmas won't come, I swear. It's literally the taste of Christmas. Cinnamon is also essential, but be careful with it. If you add too much or leave it in the pot for too long, the mulled wine will become too strong and bitter. Be careful with that. I also like to have some cardamom and ginger, which you can add too. It's extremely important that all the spices are whole, not ground. With ground spices, the mulled wine will end up tasting more like a soup than a Christmas drink. All the spices represent secondary and tertiary aromas, meaning aromas derived from the aging in barrel, which are secondary aromas like wood, pepper, sometimes smoke, and from aging in bottle. Yes, while aging in bottle, wine often gets the aromas of cloves, again, pepper, mushroom, wet leaves. So we are basically adding up all the ingredients in order not to wait the wine to obtain all these aromas naturally, which obviously is way slower, and this wine will cost way more, and we don't want it for mulled wine because it should be an approachable winter Christmas drink. No nose up things here. Once we've added all the fruits and spices, all that's left is to pour the wine into the pot and place it on the stove. I love that feeling when you can pour the whole bottle of wine, not just the 125 milliliter glass. It's a little bit of a professional quirk as a sommelier, I know. People often say that the wine shouldn't boil during preparation. The only reason we don't want the wine to boil is to preserve the alcohol. The alcohol content in mulled wine suffers greatly due to evaporation, and when the wine boils, it loses even more ethanol. If you don't care about the alcohol content or you prefer to make almost non-alcoholic mulled wine, so go ahead, boil it. Alternatively, you can just use a wine with a high alcohol percentage if you want your mulled wine to be a little bit stronger. But there is a small additional reason not to let the wine boil, which I'll tell you in about a minute. So the first bubbles are appearing, which means the wine is hot enough to be called mulled wine. You turn off the stove and let it sit for some 5 to 10 minutes so the wine can absorb all the flavors from the spices and fruit. After that, we only need one final touch to make our mulled wine unique. We are missing only one ingredient to make it the perfect Christmas drink, and that ingredient is a teaspoon of honey. I didn't add any sugar to the pot on purpose as I didn't want the mulled wine to be too sweet. 1 teaspoon of honey adds just the right amount of sweetness without turning it into syrup, you know. Remember that I mentioned earlier not to overheat the wine. That's because we are going to add some honey. Honey is a natural product rich in vitamins and minerals that support our immune system. However, if you heat honey too much, it loses all its health benefits. The critical point is 60 degrees Celsius, but it's best to add honey to a slightly cooler drink. Of course, we can drink mulled wine cold just to keep the honey benefits, but the ideal temperature would be around 55 degrees Celsius. It's still hot enough to warm us up, but not too hot so that it destroys the beneficial properties of honey. Sometimes honey has tiny pieces of honeycomb, which we'd prefer to avoid in our mulled wine, so it's better to use just plain honey without them. Honey is one of the tertiary descriptors the sommeliers use to describe wine when tasting it, meaning that honey-like flavors naturally occur in wine during the bottle aging, especially in white wines. But as long as we are using the least expensive wine as a base for our today's mulled wine, we are basically adding all the ingredients that could have already been in wine. So there is nothing odd here, no odd artificial flavors, but all the flavors are intensified compared to the flavors we have in just normal wine, not mulled wine. You'll want to ask me, Gary, can I just take a good bottle of wine, which costs around 30-50 bucks, and prepare mulled wine from it in order not to add all this fluff like fruit and honey? Of course, you can do that, but A, the flavors and aromas anyway will be way less pronounced compared to the mulled wine with added fruit and spices. And B, you'll just drink boiled good wine, but it's not the point of mulled wine, which is destined to be fine and easy and approachable drink. If you want to savor a bottle of good wine, go ahead, but please don't boil it. Or take a €2 Rosso Veneto and prepare a nice mulled wine, which the entire family and friends will happily enjoy. Honestly, this recipe with a touch of honey is my favorite. It is slightly sweet with that characteristic honey aroma. If you haven't tried it before, you definitely should. It is delicious. Contact me in case you want to plan your wine adventure in one of the wine countries of the world, as I am offering private wine tour guiding in a variety of wine regions. You can DM me if you have any questions. All the links are in the description down below. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year! Bye.